This is Charlotte Talks. I'm Mike Collins. HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities, were established to provide educational opportunities to black Americans during times of segregation and exclusion from predominantly white institutions. Since their inception, they have played a transformative role in educating black men, preparing them for leadership, providing social connections, and increasing their potential for economic success and political empowerment. But today, enrollment in college in general, as well as at HBCUs, is experiencing a decline, which is particularly acute when it comes to the enrollment of black men at HBCUs. The implications could be far-reaching for both the potential students and for the institutions themselves, which have already been stressed by other factors. So today, we're going to look at the possible causes of this decline in enrollment, what it could mean, and what HBCUs are doing to combat it. We're joined by Dr. Jerry Wilson. He's Director of Policy and Advocacy at CREE, Racial Equity in Education. Anthony Brooks is Vice President of Enrollment Management and Board of Trustees Liaison at Livingstone College, who's been working in admissions at HBCUs for about 20 years. And Marvin Brown is a junior at Johnson C. Smith University, majoring in business management with an eye toward attending law school and ultimately practicing family law. He is also the lead anchor and reporter for Golden Bulls Television. That's the on-campus TV channel at Johnson C. Smith University. Welcome to you all. Good morning. Anthony,
Good
I'm going to
morning.
begin with you. College enrollment is generally down by about 15% from its peak in 2010. That's colleges and universities overall. Do you or your colleagues understand why? What's driving this?
For the decline, Livingstone College is a little different because we've had increases for the past 2 years, but
Well,
we are aware of the decline. There are several challenges for young folk as it relates to attending institution of higher education. Of course, one is exposure. Depending on where they're living, where they're from, and who they may be exposed to in terms of higher education. And of course, finances are continue to be a challenge for our young people as well. And so that's what we're seeing throughout. And it takes intentionality to be able to change that trajectory when it comes to enrollment for our young folk.
Dr. Wilson, he just mentioned that enrollment at Livingstone is up, and in fact, HBCUs in general have experienced less of a decline than other colleges and universities percentage-wise, only 11% in that same period, but the figure is dramatically higher for enrollment of black men attending HBCUs. Their numbers have declined across the country by about 25%. How alarmed are you by that fact?
Well, I'm very alarmed, right? And part of the work that we do at Creed is ensuring that educational spaces are welcoming, productive spaces for all students, particularly students of color. And it is alarming that many Black men don't feel that way about institutions of higher education. I'll say that, the origins of why they feel that way, there are many factors, right? But one of them is the kindergarten through 12th grade education system, which we focus on and study a lot. And knowing what we know about K-12 education in the United States, it's not surprising that many Black men don't see higher education as a place for them.
But these numbers are on the decline, which means that something is changing. It wasn't always this way. I'm just curious if either of you, Anthony Brooks or Jerry Wilson, if you know or you can point to anything that's changed that might be driving this a precipitous decline, 25%. Which one of you wants to take that? Anthony, you got your mic on, so go ahead and talk to me.
Well, it really requires intentionality. And I will say that because our young males are in environments where they're not always chosen to be able to experience certain types of opportunities. And it requires all folk who are around our young African American males to really be intentional about reaching out, making sure that they are aware of all opportunities that are provided to them. You can't, look at someone and make an assumption that college may not be for them. There are institutions throughout the nation who provide wonderful opportunities. And the more we continue to share that and the more we continue to talk about that, and we place this opportunity in front of our males, I believe we have an opportunity to change the numbers that we're hearing as it stands right now.
Jerry, if enrollment among black men is down at HBCUs by 25%, I'm wondering if the same is true at colleges and universities overall. Are fewer black men enrolling in all colleges and universities of late?
Yes, that is the case. And so there are again lots of reasons for that. I'll say that 2010, which is the high mark for enrollment, feels like two lifetimes ago, right? The amount of major historical life events that we've lived through since then that shape not only how young people develop and how they see themselves and their sense of opportunity in the world and who they can become, but also has presented some very real challenges, both economically and socially, in terms of decisions about what type of future to pursue. So um, the Great Recession certainly played a role and may have been a reason why some people decided to enroll in higher education. The election of President Barack Obama, again, as an inspiring figure who made lots of young Black boys feel like they could become whatever they wanted to become in this country, uh, followed shortly by the rise of the Tea Party, right? This political movement that sought to um, oppose President Obama's agenda, but also enact policies that were harmful to communities of color across the country. So, I, from my perspective, I think that it's, of course, a range of things, but a lot of it has to do with mixed messages about how welcome um, Black men and Black boys are in the United States and what sorts of limitations they perceive on their um, life trajectories.
Certainly, the implications of declining enrollment for black males at colleges and universities at large, and HBCUs in particular, is difficult for your institutions. But what are the overall implications of this? What are the possible problems that are likely to result from this if this trend continues, Anthony?
Well, you're going to have for the decline of wealth generation for our young people in this if this continues to happen. That's one of the great things about attending institutions of higher learning is that here at Livingstone College, one of the things we make sure we align ourselves with or making sure the students are set on the proper path is for wealth generation. To not be on the path of wealth generation puts us on the decline. And if you're not in a position to earn, make a living, provide for your families, then that is going to be a challenge. Of course, it's not always the case that it has to be the path of higher education, but historical figures will show that over the course of a lifetime, African American males who obtain college degrees um, will earn more, and if a first generation African American male goes to college, enrollment research says that they will help the next three generations behind them just off that one college degree because they're set up on the proper path. So to see something that is adverse to that sets us on a decline that would not be great, not only for our community, but also for the diverse and wealth generation that could happen for our families as well.
And rising wealth, rising standards of living help the community at large. It's not just one community, it's the entire community that's helped by
Absolutely.
this. We've been talking about a young black man. Let's talk to a young black man. Marvin Brown's with us. He's a junior in business management at Livingstone's rival, Johnson C. Smith University. And a lot of people, Marvin, are now choosing, black and white and any stripe you can name, are choosing not to pursue a college education. They've made a decision based on cost, based on return on investment. They don't want to be saddled with a lifetime of college loan debt. There is some pushback now in wider circles that not everyone should or needs to go to college. You have chosen a different path. So why did you decide to go to college? Why did you decide to go to Johnson C. Smith?
Thank you for that question, first of all. I'll take it back to what Mr. Brooks said about exposure. So, when I was younger, I had someone in my life who had graduated from college and who was exposed to what a college degree could do and exposed me to that. So, when I would see what a college degree could do, how it could affect the jobs that you could have. You could be that was one of the ways that you could live outside of your city. I thought that's everything that I wanted. I decided to go to college because I wanted to change the trajectory of my family. My mother and father did not graduate high school, so going to college gave me the idea that I can be different from them, or I can do things differently, or I can do things legally, and I can do things legally I can earn money by doing legal work. Going to college gave me the opportunity to be around people that I probably wouldn't have met. For example, being at Johnson C. Smith, I met a lot of black men with a PhD. In my community, that would not have happened. I met a lot of black men who own their home. That's another thing that would not have happened, that I would not have seen if I was to stay in my community. Exposure, it's important to expose black students to young black students who are in high school, who are in middle school, to these things so that it could motivate them to achieve it in the future or want it for themselves.
Let's spend some time talking about that because I think that people who are privileged don't
Mm-hmm.
realize that privilege because they've lived in it their entire lives and they see examples of what has led to that privilege.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're in a community that is underprivileged, you don't see those examples. You don't know what you can be if there's nobody telling you you can do this. So I'm curious
Exactly.
about your mentor, the person that you said was influenced you and told you that you could be a college student, that you could go on to bigger, better things.
Mm-hmm.
How did that come to be in your life?
So my mentor, who you're referring to her as my mentor, but she's actually my godmother. Her name is Mary Edwards, and she really we would do we would do things that my grandmother was not knowledgeable about. So we would do things SAT prep, ACT prep. She graduated from Benedict College, which is a prominent, well, not prominent, but a school that prominent isn't the word I was looking for. I'm not saying the school isn't prominent. I'm saying the school is a popular choice for people from my city. So
Right.
people from Charleston, where I'm from, go to Benedict College a lot, go to South Carolina State a lot. And she went to South Carolina, she went to Benedict College. And she always would speak about her time there and how it really shaped her to being who she is now. How it really made an impact on her in Pittsburgh, living outside of Charleston, being around people who were in other fields, being around people who just around a bunch of young, motivated students who were pursuing a career in medicine, a career in law, a career in social work, which is the path that she went down. Being in that space, being out of your box, which our box is Charleston. So she would always speak to me about that as a child, and that motivated me, you know.
Possibilities. Marvin
Right.
Brown's a student at Johnson C. Smith University. Anthony Brooks is with us from Livingstone College, and Dr. Jerry Wilson is the Director of Policy and Advocacy for CREED, the Center for Race and Equity in Education. I want to come back and explore your story, Marvin, in just a moment, but we have to take a break. It's Charlotte Talks on WFAE.
Coming up on the next Charlotte Talks Local News Roundup, this week marked the one-year anniversary of the deadliest day in Charlotte for law enforcement. We take a look back. Charlotte City Council is moving forward with efforts to find a replacement for already departed Tariq Bakari. Mecklenburg County is in the center of an immigration debate that appears to be growing, and the next phase of upgrades to the Spectrum Center were unveiled. We'll have those stories and more with our roundtable of reporters tomorrow morning at 9, right here on 90.7 WFAE.
Americans consume more than 2 or 3 times the recommended daily amount of sugar. Now, HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says sugar is poison. For our next installment of our series, In Good Health, we dig into that claim with the experts and you. That's next time on 1A.
And you can tune into 1A this morning at 10 o'clock just after Charlotte Talks. Support comes from WFAE listeners and the Southern Environmental Law Center, dedicated to finding solutions to the toughest environmental challenges, starting here in the South. More information about how SELC is working to make a difference here in North Carolina and beyond at southernenvironment.org.
It's Charlotte Talks on listener-funded 90.7 WFAE and WFHE. I'm Mike Collins. We're talking about declining enrollment among black males at HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities, why that's happening, and maybe look at some possible remedies to that with Dr. Jerry Wilson, who's with Creed. Anthony Brooks is Vice President of Enrollment Management at Livingstone College, and Marvin Brown is a junior in business management at Johnson C. Smith University and the lead anchor and reporter for Golden Bulls TV, which is the on-campus television system at JCSU. Since black male enrollment is down by 25% at HBCUs, Marvin, you still chose to attend one, Johnson C. Smith University. As I understand it, your family, correct me if I'm wrong, wanted you to go to the Citadel. You had your eye on Morehouse. But ultimately decided upon Johnson C. Smith because you were awarded a James B. Duke scholarship, which is a significant scholarship. But why did you choose an HBCU?
I spoke about it earlier. I chose an HBCU because I wanted to see people that look like me in the highest seats and at the highest level of their career, at the highest level of their education. It wasn't until I got to Johnson C. Smith where I saw many different black men with a PhD, many different black men who were financially literate, many different black men who had values that aligned with mine. They value the right thing, which there is no specific formula on what the right thing is, but I always thought that I wanted to be around people that look like me, that have similar values, that are driven by impact for their community, and who really are also driven by just kind of lifting as they climb. I really found that at Johnson C. Smith University, seeing all of the professors who were very supportive, who are all of the administrators who are supportive as well. With it being such a small school, you do get that one-on-one attention and that catering to that you typically wouldn't get at a large school that has about 40,000 students or something like that. Now, going back to the Citadel, in Charleston, which is a prominent school where I'm from, I can use the word prominent now because that's an appropriate word for the school. The people in Charleston really, um, really think highly of the Citadel, and that's where I was accepted. And at one point in time, I was going to go there, and I, that was a decision that was kind of, that was encouraged by other people. I wanted to, like I said, I wanted to go to Johnson C. Smith where I could be around people that looked like me and not feel like an outsider. I wouldn't
Dr.
have gotten that
Wilson,
experience at the Citadel.
expand on that because that's one of the advantages I would think of going to an HBCU
Mm-hmm.
of selecting one for students of all genders, but particularly for black males.
Mm-hmm.
How do you sell that? How do you get that story out?
What story are you talking about?
I'm talking well, Jerry Wilson. The question was for Mr. Wilson, for Dr. Wilson. How do you get
Oh,
the story of the value of that type of an education at that type of school for a young black male?
Yeah, so I think the numbers speak for themselves in terms of greater success that Black students experience at historically Black colleges and universities, particularly um, Black men, right? These are spaces where, as Marvin said, you can see yourself affirmed. You can have Black male professors, right, who not only look like you and may have similar values and they come from similar uh, backgrounds, but have excelled in their fields to the point where they are now shaping the future within that field. That's very inspiring, and it's also very rare at predominantly white institutions.
And
I
Anthony,
think that, yeah, it's
no,
very
go ahead.
important. for that reason.
Okay. Anthony, studies have suggested that black students are more likely to graduate when they attend HBCUs than they might from other schools. If you agree with that, why would that be the case?
I think the support network is huge. I think the wraparound services are also huge because there are programs and other opportunities that are designed for the success of the students that attend, because the needs are very well outlined, so to speak. And so there's some, again, I've used the word intentionality a lot, but I think that is so critically important when you look at how institutions are designed. We know where our needs are. We know the needs of our community, and it's important to design programs to meet those needs. And I think that's where a lot of the success comes at our HBCUs.
Since you have dealt with enrollment, well, you're dealing with it now at Livingstone College, but you've dealt with it over 20 years at various other institutions. Is that part of the sales pitch? The fact that if you come here, you are more likely to graduate and therefore more likely to have success?
Absolutely, absolutely. Our numbers speak to everything that you just mentioned, particularly here at Livingstone College. Again, understanding the needs of our community, we want to meet those needs, but we also want to equip and prepare our students to be able to go back out not only into our communities but also to the global marketplace, and address those needs. And I think that's what makes us so unique. So we're uniquely equipped to pinpoint the things that plague our communities, and then graduate individuals that are very well prepared and confident to go in those spaces to be able to make a difference. And those
Marvin,
go ahead. Sorry.
Marvin, aside from all of the things that we've talked about, the advantages that we've talked about, are there things about your experience that you didn't anticipate that would also be valuable for other young people to know?
That's a great question. I'm trying to see how I word that. Can you ask it one more time?
Sure. Are there other, aside from the fact that you have mentors, you're seeing people like yourself in positions of success, which makes you understand, yep, I could do this too if I apply myself. Aside from that, just being there at Johnson C. Smith or another HBCU, what are some of the things that maybe you didn't anticipate discovering that you have discovered that would be of benefit to others like you who haven't enrolled anywhere yet?
I would say college, I feel like is designed for people with a lot of family or parental support. So when you come from a household where you may not have had that parental support, or you may not have had family support, you experience a lot of challenges financially in college. That's what I did not anticipate. It can be a little bit more difficult for students who are on their own, quote unquote. That's one of the hardest things that have happened. Like one of the hardest challenges that students have to fight. If they're on their own, they don't have a lot of family support, or they don't have family members. Like I spoke about my family that didn't graduate high school. They have family members that don't understand what it's like to be in college, or how much support is needed.
And do you feel that you get that additional support at an HBCU because the people that you're dealing with, the professors, other staff members, understand that more intuitively perhaps than they would elsewhere?
I do feel that way.
Dr. Wilson, economic mobility is one of the benefits that come from all college educations, and historically, for African Americans shut out of those schools, that has come from HBCUs. They paved the way for that experience. Not every college degree ends with economic success. It depends, I suppose, on what you major in the field that you go into. But do young black men understand that this is a component of raising their standard of living over time?
I think they do, right? I think that Black men absolutely understand that. I think that Black men value education. But I think that there are other factors that Black men weigh against that belief and that understanding, right? One of which is that the returns to education are unequal across race, right? Meaning that me as a Black man, while I believe that I will benefit from education, that it will raise my standard of living and give me opportunities, I know that it will not give me equal opportunities to some of my white friends and colleagues, right? And that's challenging, right? When I consider the investment that I have to make in higher education, right? Potentially going into debt, tens of thousands of dollars or more, versus the opportunity cost of, well, maybe I can start a business, right? Or maybe I can pursue some other path. I think that's part of the calculus that many Black men are making, and one reason why many are choosing not to pursue higher education nowadays.
Is that a why? That could be applied to any young person choosing to or not choosing to go to college, because if you're going to end up with hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt that is likely to last you into middle age, it's going to prevent you from buying a house. It's going to prevent you from a lot of other things. A lot of young people who are saddled with that debt have delayed marriage and starting families, etc. That calculus is a difficult one to make. What would you say to somebody who faces that, who's not on a scholarship, who will have to pay this debt off at some point? Do you then change your major or decide I can't major in education even though I'd be a great teacher because they just don't make enough money to pay these loans off? So I'm going to go into something else. What do you say to these young people? And I'm interested in hearing from Anthony Brooks about this too, but Dr. Wilson, you go first.
I'll say that's the heartbreaking reality, Mike, is that many would-be Black teachers, Black male teachers, are making that decision based on the life that they want to give their families and the reality that certain careers like education just are not paying enough. And it's a cycle, right? Because there are not enough Black male teachers to inspire and push Black male high school students into college, we see this cycle loop over and over again. So I think that I would encourage Black men still to pursue a college education. I think that it's been wonderful for my own experience. It's given me opportunities that I could have never imagined, right? And allowed me to work on problems within my community that I've always wanted to address and solve. But I also understand that, every person's situation is different. While on the whole, that may be true, and I hope that people do it, given the economic realities and social realities right now, I understand why folks are making other decisions.
Anthony Brooks, it's been a long time since I've enrolled in college, and I don't remember. I must have had these conversations because I had a student loan. I just don't remember ever having them. But what do you advise young people when they're sitting in front of you and potentially enrolling at Livingstone and need financial aid, et cetera? And it's not going to be a scholarship in some of their cases.
Right.
How do you help them make that calculation?
Well, brilliant question. One of the things you have to make sure that they understand is that it is an investment. Not making certain investments could perhaps.
Can we start there? Because a lot of people who don't deal in investments, who live hand to mouth, who are one paycheck away from disaster, they don't know from investments. How do you explain the concept
of investment? You're right.
Yeah.
So what I mean by investment is time. So it's the time component. So for example, it's going to be a trade-off. There are so many additional opportunities that go beyond loans to help young folk obtain a college education, such as there are scholarship opportunities. There are ways in which there are programs that help fund a college education. There are churches, there are organizations, national organizations, local organizations that can help pay for an education. But the investment is really the time and doing the research. We see young people all around, whether they be at a bus stop, leaving school on their way to school, they're on their cell phones. Now there are apps for scholarships and things along those lines. So it is going to take time for them to be able to say, let me take time away from some of the other things that I may be doing to look at some scholarship opportunities that are out there for someone like me who want to help a young person obtain a college education and start taking advantage of those opportunities. The other component is what we do. College admissions offices and financial aid offices, we help young people find their path, not only to gain admissions to college, but help them search for college scholarships to help soften the financial investment, if you will, for them to obtain a college education. So the investment more so for folk who may not have the investment, so to speak, what we know it to be. But I would say the time investment in researching what opportunities are available to help offset the cost of education. There are so many institutions that help pay for college. Livingstone, for one, we actually stack scholarships. Students do not have to choose an academic or an athletic scholarship. We actually will give you both if you qualify for an athletic and academic scholarship. And so
Marvin, you are the recipient of a scholarship, the James B. Duke scholarship at Johnson C. Smith University. Would you have been able to attend were it not for that scholarship?
I would have been able to attend, but it would have been a totally different situation. So James B. Duke, for those who don't know, is a full ride scholarship. So there is no debt attached to it. And before I got the full ride scholarship, I was given a smaller scholarship before they decided to give me the full ride. And that I would have had to take out about $5,000 in loans, and I would have been able to attend, but the outcome would have been different. So
And a lot of people who don't, you don't, unless you have children particularly if you haven't been to college yourself, you don't know what's available to you in terms of financial aid. So how did you know what was available to you? That navigating that can be difficult.
I would say that exposure, my godmother and I, we would talk about scholarships. We would talk about SAT prep. We would talk about what schools offer this and this loan and the interest rate from a young age. We would always be having those conversations. So exposing me to that at a young age just let me know how to move when it was time to apply to college, when it was time to apply to scholarships, what this loan interest rate was, what this was, exposure. That'll really make a difference for sure.
Studies show that as a general rule, young men arriving at college campuses across the country are academically less skilled than women. And according to Richard Reeves, who is the president of the American Institute for Boys and Men, that's even more true for men of color and young black men. Anthony, why? What's going on? What's going wrong in the lower grades? And I only have a minute in this segment, and we can get back and talk about it. But what's going wrong?
So one of the things we have to be mindful of when we look at how traditional education is designed is the fact that there are several tracks that students can take when it comes to taking courses in high school. If you're not set up on the right track, college prep track, that could hinder your opportunities to even attend an institution of higher learning. And so again, the exposure of making sure that folk who are around our young African-American males provide the opportunities to say, this is the type of track that can set you up to attend a college, not necessarily steering them in ways that may not lead them to college.
And I have 30 seconds, but not everybody gets to be on that track. And sometimes impressions are transmitted, and people don't think you're ready for that track. Therefore, you don't get on that track, and that affects black men more predominantly than white men. Why? 10 seconds.
It's because it's not always introduced to our African-American men.
We have to take a break. We will explore that more on the other side. We have to take a break. It's Charlotte Talks on WFAE.
It's just about 9:40. Coming up later at noon on Here and Now, NPR's Frank Langford has been talking to people who fled authoritarian states to find a new life in the U.S. They say they're worried America is starting to resemble the places that they escaped. You'll get his reporting and analysis alongside the day's news at noon, right here on WFAE.
Don't miss a beat. Tune into the Charlotte Jazz Channel and hear today's brightest young artists alongside the legendary jazz icons. Whether you're an avid jazz enthusiast or just looking for an oasis from the news, the Charlotte Jazz Channel from WFAE is available 24/7 on our mobile app at WFAE.org or on WFAE HD2 on the radio.
It's Public Media Giving Days. Show your support for the independent, fact-checked journalism you rely on by becoming a sustaining member of this station today. And thank you.
Help WFAE grow alongside Charlotte. Become a sustaining member during Public Media Giving Days at WFAE.org. Thanks.
It's Charlotte Talks on Listener Funded, 90.7 WFAE and WFAE.org. I'm Mike Collins. We're talking about HBCUs and declining black male enrollment at those schools across the country, down by about 25%. Dr. Jerry Wilson is with us. He's Director of Policy and Advocacy for CREED, the Center for Race and Equity in Education. Anthony Brooks is Vice President of Enrollment Management at Livingstone College, and Marvin Brown is a junior in Business Management at Johnson C. Smith University. We were talking just before the break, Anthony Brooks, about the college track in high school and how some people are just not targeted for that, even though they may have the intellect and the capacity. For whatever reason, they are not put on that track, and that kind of cripples them from the get-go. How do you solve that?
I think all students should be provided the opportunity to be on the college prep track. They also should have enough courses available. So in other words, you don't want to cherry pick and say, well, there are only 10 slots in this particular class. So the students who I believe will go to college, I'm going to make sure those 10 individuals are in those slots. And sometimes African-American young males are not selected to be in those slots. So this is where the rubber really meets the road. This is why it's so important for parents to advocate for the young people to make sure that they're placed on college prep track. I've seen students who graduate high school with a 3.0, but they're on a technical track. None of those courses will allow them to go to a four-year institution because no one was aware of the fact that tracks make a difference. And so the exposure of those tracks and exposing all young people to the opportunity, whether they go or not, I think makes a difference, and not necessarily selecting students who they believe will attend college, because there are a lot of students.
This plays into something you brought up earlier, and that is inadequate K through 12 preparation throughout the system. It doesn't just apply to HBCUs; it applies to all colleges and universities. It's said that many attend primary and secondary schools, particularly black individuals these schools are underfunded. They have limited access to resources. It's a crime, and I don't understand why in 2025 that's still the case, but it is. So black female students, however, attend these same schools in many cases, and they are not affected similarly. They're going to college. Why?
Yeah, so I think that there are lots of reasons for that. One is, although both black men and black women are marginalized when it comes to K-12 education and are suspended and expelled at disproportionate rates to their white counterparts, and to some extent, both are criminalized through that process. When we think of the school to prison pipeline and the way that the behaviors of young black men are perceived in schools, it heightens the impact of that experience. And what I mean by that is a fight between two male students and one student is a black male. If he is seen as being the aggressor in that situation and gets a more harsh punishment or a longer suspension, right, that's going to change how his teachers perceive him, how the counselors perceive him, and all sorts of opportunities that he will have going forward, in addition to how he sees himself, right? So that although all black students are disproportionately suspended and expelled in our K-12 education system, the gendered nature of that system does have an even harsher impact on black male students, unfortunately, which limits their opportunities for higher education after high school. And again,
you bring up an interesting point. The fact that this is happening not just to black men, it's happening to all men. Women outnumber men in colleges and universities now. Girls are outperforming boys throughout their educational experience, from kindergarten all the way through high school. The result is that the top 2/3 of students in high school are girls. What's happening at those lower levels that is discouraging boys in general and black? You've already talked about some of the challenges faced by black men, but what's happening? Why are girls succeeding where men are failing, boys are failing?
Well, it's partly because of the expectations, right? Um, Teachers are overwhelmingly white and female, right? So if white women are something like 80% of the high school of the teachers in the United States, um, when they are picturing their model student, the student who is performing best and the student on whom they will lavish praise and motivate and encourage, oftentimes is someone who reminds them of themselves, right? Which is why white girls are often the highest performers in K-12 education. It's because they are encouraged and welcomed and affirmed in ways that other students who have different identities are not, largely because of the teaching workforce, the makeup of the workforce. And again, Black boys have very few role models who share their race and gender that they can look up to in lower grades. And it's a little better in the higher grades, but still nowhere close to where it needs to be.
So, Marvin, you don't have black students, young black students don't have the role models. Males don't have the role models in general because most of the teachers are women throughout their lower grade experience. And if young black students are treated differently than white students, if there's a fight among a black or a white person and the black kid gets suspended and the white person gets a slap on the hand, that is not a good outcome. And it leads, I've read that it leads to, well, it sends messages of inferiority in classrooms that can affect a person's self-esteem. And nobody wants to be in an environment where they feel bad about themselves. Do you have any anecdotal information about that from yourself or from your peers as you were growing up that would corroborate that?
Hmm. So can you ask that in a different way? I mean, make
Well,
it in more simple terms.
Well, was your experience or those
Hmm.
of your peers like that? Did you see examples as you went through the lower grades
Hmm.
where people who were smart enough to succeed just didn't feel good about themselves, didn't get the good impression of themselves, were treated perhaps differently than others, and that led them to not enjoy the experience, and therefore they wrote off school. I'm not doing it. I'm tuning
Absolutely.
out.
Absolutely. So I feel like the amount of white female teachers in school when I was in elementary school, it definitely played a difference in, you know, inferiority, the word that you used earlier. Black boys being punished harder for doing something versus someone else, you know. Or another thing is a person's household circumstances plays a huge role in how they perform in school, in elementary and middle school, and they're basically being held accountable because of how they are reacting to their volatile, harsh household, you know. And a lot of times in the black community, there is not all the time, but a lot of times there is an absent father, or there is a lot of things that children need that they don't have. And going to school and they may misbehave, and that's their way of reacting to it. And that plays a huge role in their punishments and how their teachers treat them and how their teachers punish them.
Dr. Wilson, we know that the Trump administration is working hard to strike any references from DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, from anything involving the federal government, including their choice of funding other institutions and other programs. The New York Times reports that programs designed to nurture black academic achievement may be dismantled by the Trump administration, which deems them racist. Racist because they are part of DEI, which they say is unnecessary. We know that's been happening at some colleges and universities. Is that the case at HBCUs? Their whole purpose is diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yes, unfortunately, that is the case at HBCUs as well, right? So North Carolina is fortunate enough to be a state with the most four-year historically Black colleges and universities in the country. We have five publics and five privates, accredited universities. But those public institutions are part of the University of North Carolina system and are governed by the Board of Governors. So last spring, the UNC Board of Governors actually passed a new diversity policy that essentially tried to prevent university staff from doing diversity, equity, and inclusion related activities, right? And this was applied also at HBCUs, which how do you even implement such a policy at a university that was designed and created expressly for educating African Americans?
Right.
So it the jury is still out to see exactly how campuses will be affected and how students will be impacted by this policy, because this is the first year of implementation. But just anecdotally, it's not going well, right? There's restrictions on free speech. Services that students rely and depend on have been cut or limited in ways that are unhelpful for the mission of educating all students, particularly first generation students and male students.
Anthony, at the same time that HBCUs are experiencing this 25% drop in enrollment of black male students, these schools are experiencing an uptick in enrollment of non-black students. Maybe not yours, but in general around the country. This alters the demographic makeup of these schools. Does it also have an impact on some of the reasons that black male students may or may not choose an HBCU? I mean, if it's populated by other non-black students more often than not, does that kind of dilute the purpose?
Not necessarily. What we found is that our students that attend HBCUs have always attended K through 12 with other students of nationalities and ethnicities. And so we're used to it, so to speak. So it wouldn't be a shock, so to speak. In fact, we've always, in fact, HBCUs have always hung on, doors have hung on welcome hinges. We've never discriminated against any students. And so we are used to having a diverse population. We're better for it. And we will embrace the fact that there are students of other nationalities on our campuses.
Well,
although we are an
let me
HBCU.
ask you. Let me ask you about this, because the American Institute for Boys and Men reports that the share of non-black students at HBCUs has increased 24% since 1976, with significant increases in the share of Hispanic and multiracial students. In fact, the share of Hispanic students at HBCUs has doubled from 2010 to 2022. You welcome them, but do you understand why they come there as opposed to other schools?
Yes, we do, because of opportunities. They have come to realize that there are opportunities and the return on investment is also wonderful at HBCUs. And so we also actively recruit all students of other ethnicities as well. And so they come to our institutions, they flourish, they have a great time, they persist, as well as graduate. And so we have success stories of students beyond African Americans that have been able to do well at HBCUs here, especially here at Livingstone College.
One of the suggested solutions to all of this is targeted interventions in K through 12 education in black communities. Is that something HBCUs, Dr. Wilson, can be involved in, are involved in, should be involved in, or does that need to come from other areas?
That is absolutely something that HBCUs can be and should be involved in. Personally, I remember when I was younger, I used to attend summer camp on the campus of Johnson C. Smith University. And that exposure early on made me interested in college and wonder what it would be like to attend Johnson C. Smith as a college student. I think that structured programs like that bring young students of color to HBCU campuses and let them know that this is a place where they can be welcomed and affirmed and see people like them in a variety of roles are absolutely essential and would address this issue and make a difference.
Marvin, what are you telling your peers now that you have several years of college under your belt? When you go back home to Charleston on break, et cetera, what do you tell your peers who may or may not be in a college? What do you say to them about your experience? And have you had any impact on maybe changing some minds?
Mm-hmm. So usually I have friends that range from all types of different fields. Some people didn't go to college after school. Some people went to the military. As the person that I am very accepting because even though I'm in college, I don't feel like it was for everybody. So my friends, whether they decide to go to college, nothing really changed with our relationship. Like I just, everything is still the same. But what I do say is how it's impacted my life. For example, I got the opportunity to study abroad in Ghana last summer. That's an opportunity that wouldn't have came about if I didn't go to college. So I always tell them the highlights and the good things that have happened because of my matriculation. Things that I wouldn't have experienced without going to college. I try to motivate them that way. This is what I did, and I did this, and I met this person. So, for example, as far as being a one of the anchors for the news channel, you meet all of the celebrities as they will come to campus, and you get the opportunity to interview them. Like my latest interview was Stedman Graham, and that was an amazing opportunity. Those are opportunities that you get being in the space of it being in a collegiate space. So I try to highlight things like that and tell them, this is what I'm doing. This is the opportunity I have this summer, and this is what I'm doing late. I feel like that makes a difference to them. They probably feel like, okay, I want to do that. Okay, I can. My main goal is to let them know you can do this. It is not hard at all.
North Carolina A&T has launched a new program for male students and faculty to support one another and stay in school. And they've started this thing called Aggie Men. It's an acronym for Male Empowerment Network for those just starting their academic journey. I've less than a minute, Anthony. What can you tell us about that program? It's not your school, but what can you tell us about that program?
Well, I don't know much about North Carolina A&T's program, but I can tell you if that program is designed to uplift, empower, and encourage young African American men to attend institution of higher learning. My hat's off to them for putting something like that in place. It is certain.
And the bottom line here is that's what's evidently needed. I wish we had more time to explore some more substantive solutions to all this, but we'll leave that for another day. Dr. Jerry Wilson, Director of Policy and Advocacy at CREED, the Center for Race and Equity in Education. Anthony Brooks is Vice President of Enrollment Management at Livingstone College, and Marvin Brown's the Junior in Business Management at Johnson C. Smith University. Good luck to you, Marvin, and thank you all for the hour.
Thank you.
Charlotte Talks is a production of 90.7 WFAE. Support for Charlotte Talks comes from Mazda of South Charlotte. Our executive producer is Gabe Altieri. The senior producer is Sarah D'Elia. Our producer is Chris Jones. We have additional production help from Jesse Steinmetz. For more information on Charlotte Talks, to listen to past episodes, or to subscribe to the Charlotte Talks podcast, visit WFAE.org/Charlotte Talks. Additional support for WFAE programming comes from the corporation